Alright, so this is going to be part 2 to what if Asta was born with anti-magic. So with that being said, let's just roll that intro.
Bow in the presence of greatness. Cause right now that has forsaken us. You should be honored by my lateness. That I would even show up to this fake shit. So go ahead, go nuts, go.
Alright, so if you don't know what that was, that video, I'm actually sponsored by Beautiful Halo. So if you want to get some anime merch or meme merch, you could go in the link in the description, and any purchase on the website will help out this channel. But also I have an announcement. So I've been thinking about this for a very long time, and I finally did it, and that is create a Patreon. So for those who want to support the channel monetarily, then you can go and donate to the Patreon. There's a whole bunch of there's only 3 tiers. I don't want to make too many, and I'm pretty sure 3 tiers is like the minimum you could have. So I have 3 tiers. That being $1 tier, $2 or $1, $5, and then $10. So I don't really expect anyone to go higher than 1, because I put most of my I don't really want people to spend more than $1, if that makes sense. So I put a bunch of different benefits, such as the general stuff that you get for Patreon, getting videos earlier, shout outs at the end of videos, things like that. And I also added this one thing that I thought was pretty interesting, and that is like a weekly raffle. So what would happen is that each week for the first month, I would choose a different person from my Patreon list, and then on the following month, so that people don't like cancel their like donations, they would actually get one drawing from me, anything they would want, obviously with some restrictions, because I won't draw certain things, if you know what I mean. But anyways, yeah, so if you want to support the channel that way, you can go to my link in the description, and there will be my Patreon. The $5 version, or the $5 tier, is basically the same as the first that you get, but you get like admin to my Discord, as well as getting a separate raffle. So like the $1 tier and the $5 tier have their own separate raffles, so you have a better chance of getting a drawing from me in the $5 tier, because less people will be in that tier, I guess you could say. So with that being said, I'm sorry for the self-promotion, so let's get into the actual what if. So the last part, that was just really an introduction to this series, and really to explain the difference between magic and anti-magic, as well as how it works and its properties. So with Asta, like I said, since he has anti-magic flowing through him, he isn't negating spells altogether, but instead having more resistance. So for example, let's say he has a binding spell on him, right? It restricts his movements and things like that. So eventually, in a couple of minutes, instead of still being hold, it would actually completely negate the spell after a couple of minutes. So it is something that's useful, but not really proactive, you could say. So yeah, the last part, we just got done with Yami basically accepting Asta into his squad, so we're gonna pick off from there. So it would have been nighttime, and this is where Asta is brought to the Black Mole's hideout with Yami and Finral, and I guess not Ghost, but Gordon as well. So as Asta opens the doors, he just sees a bunch of different unique characters just basically wrecking the place. And when he opens the door, he basically screams out that he's Asta, and then he's the newest recruit. And they don't really pay attention, because they're basically just dysfunctional, or at least that's what it seems like. So after a while, Yami just comes and basically hits the wall, causing it to break down, and he basically tells him to shut up, and that we got a new recruit. So Finral basically introduces each of the characters, that being Luck, Magna, Gray, Vanessa, and Ghosh, I believe. So he would introduce them as well as himself, as well as Gordon, I guess, and Yami. So after a while, this is where Magna would basically tell he would tell Yami that he has to do that he would tell Asta that he would have to do the initiation, the kind of baptism by fire, you could say. And Asta's up for it because he wants to get his robes. So that's what he does. So the basic training is the kind of challenges that he does is really easy for him, since I think in this one he would have had more training compared to his previous one, compared to the anime, because he would have had a lot more confidence in himself because he has a power that he could tangibly see because of the anti-magic that he's able to see the effects of, kind of. So that's a big reason why he would be a little bit stronger. Not too much, but a bit. So he gets those basic challenges out of the way really fast, and then this is the part where we get to Magna basically throwing fireballs at him. So this is what happens. Asta basically is able to dodge most and negate some of them, and this is where Magna uses his exploding he basically uses one of his most powerful fire spells, and he throws it on Asta, and it's very fast, and Asta doesn't know whether or not he can actually negate this, because if he hits it out the wrong way, it's just gonna splatter and go all over him, burning him. So what Asta does is that he activates his black form, and this isn't something that he's really done too much. And what he does is that he does like a black hurricane, but instead of like actually hitting it from the bladed side, he hits it on the flat side. So it actually does hit, or it does get swung back at Magna, but instead of Magna trying to deactivate it, Finral's actually there to use his portals to teleport it away, and this is where Magna deactivates it. The reason being is that because Asta was in his black form and hit it so hard, remember the black form makes you a lot faster, it would just make it super fast, because Asta normally has enough strength to rebound the spell, because if you don't know, it's not like it automatically like gets reflected at the same speed, right? Because what the sword does is it just acts like a wall, right? So if you bounce something off a wall, especially well, it's not really a wall, but because it's not anchored down to anything, so Asta has to put enough force to basically stand his ground and then reverse its momentum. So he has to do at least 2 times the force to rebound it at the same speed. So that's how strong Asta is, even in like the canon or the anime version. So he's a bit stronger. So after that, he gets his robes and everyone's celebrating. We get to the next day, the next day, and this is where Magna's showing him around the base, and he ends up meeting another person, that being Noelle. The interactions together pretty much goes the same way, with Noelle hitting Magna and just storming off. Then we get to the next day, and Asta's going outside trying to look for the bathroom, and he finds Noelle basically trying to practice her magic. And as she's doing this, she just gets reminded by all the people in her life that just look down at her and just see her as worthless. And then as Asta slightly moves, this is where she notices and she freaks out, and her magic backfires on her, and she gets consumed, not really consumed, but surrounded by it. And as this is happening, everyone in the Black Bulls notices it, because it's a large spike of magic, or a lot of mana. And Asta, since he does have the black form, he does end this quickly since he is able to fly, and the black form is basically a heat-seeking missile, but instead of seeking for heat, it looks for mana, or magic. So it would go straight for Noel, and he would nullify the spell there pretty easily. And Yami, or I guess Finral would have to use his teleportation to help him not fall to the ground. And Yami would basically praise Asta for doing such a good job without even having to tell him. So this is where they kind of have this little kind of, I guess you could say, like reinsurance for Noelle, because obviously she was very stuck up, but at the same time she was also fearful that they would notice and basically judge her on that. But what ends up happening is the opposite. They encourage her to try and try, because everyone in Black Moles has some sort of flaw with them. So that's why she doesn't actually get discouraged, but instead gets hope. She becomes hopeful, and also this is the first part where she starts to develop a sort of, I guess, interest in Asta, because of this first encounter with him just basically saving her and saying that she has great magic, or impressive magic, because obviously he doesn't have any. So we get later on the next day, and this is where Yami and Magna basically come back after, losing all their stuff in a bet. Yami basically tells them that he tells Magna, Asta, and Noelle, he basically tells them that they're gonna have to do a favor for this village, and that's gonna be their mission. So what they have to do is that they hunt boar that's nearby the village. So that's what they do. Asta would have a little bit of trouble fighting the boar because he's never done it before, but after a while he does get better, and he gets better pretty fast. Magna again would be tired since he'd have to use most of his mana bringing both Asta and Noelle, because both of them can't really use a broom at this point. Noelle does have magic, but can't really control it well, and Asta obviously doesn't have magic yet and hasn't learned to fly with it just yet. So yeah, after this gets to the point where they go to the village with a bunch of boars, or dead boars that they have. And then this is where Magna sees something wrong with the town, because remember, this was basically his hometown. So he notices that something was off, and the thing that was off is that there's some sort of fog around the town or the village. He doesn't know what this is, but it doesn't seem like normal weather. So they go through the fog and try to go and find the center of the town. They're able to go through the town go through the fog because of Asta's anti-magic and his anti-magic sword. So they eventually get to the center, and this is where they see a bunch of hostages as well as the village chief being dead on the ground. The person who's done this is a member of the Midnight Sun. He has ice magic, and he's threatening to kill the rest of the village just because they have low magic and they have no place in this world, in his opinion. So what happens is that he tries to shoot ice towards Asta, and Asta basically negates it with his anti-magic, and this is where Magna uses his fire to basically melt the ice, as well as try to hit the mages with it, which some do, but he's getting very much outclassed because of the amount of magic he has and, well, the potency of it, you could say. So this is very hard on him. Even though he has an advantage against ice, it's very much hard because this guy is pretty much noble, or at least on that same level. So it's very much getting Magna in a kind of tough situation. But Asta is getting a bit more, I guess you could say he's getting better chances because of his anti-magic, being able to basically just slice through anything. So this is where Asta tries to stab the guy, or the main ice mage there. But something happens. He actually does slip on the ice, not really causing him to fall, but not being able to reach him. And this is a big part. He wasn't able to reach him, and therefore didn't get a good blow on him. After that, the ice mage does use icicles, but not really icicles, but he forms like a kind of pillar, not a pillar, but a giant form of ice, and this kind of stabs Asta on the side, so he gets very injured from this. And Noelle, seeing that it might not end well for them, thinks about leaving and thinks about just running away and saving her own life. But this is when a small child actually grabs on the back of her leg and tells her and asks her, can she save them? And this is what really pushes Noelle to the point where she gains a new spell. She notices that the icicles are forming around the entire people that are there, and she actually uses her new spell. I believe it was called Sea Dragon's Cradle or something like that. Basically, it creates a dome of water, and this saves them, and the icicles just go into the water and basically dissolve. So Magna's in this kind of dome with them, and so is I don't think Asta just yet, because they think he's dead or somewhat injured enough not to move. So this is where the ice mage basically says it'll only take a minute to get through this. So he starts and touches the water dome and starts to freeze it. And this is where Asta basically just jumps into him and cuts him, or hinders him enough, hits him with the flat side and throws him across the kind of town, not really too far, but into like enough, or he not really throws him across the ground, or it's at an angle where he hits into the ground, probably at a downward diagonal kind of angle, and he just smashes into the ground. After this, Noelle basically opens a little spot in the dome for Magna to shoot his last kind of fire spell. He basically does a death prison scatter shot, I believe it was called. He throws a fireball that splits into many different fireballs that actually go past the mages, and they think that he missed and that he was, dumb for doing that. But instead, they actually, what happens is that Asta's actually on the other side and reflects it back at them, causing it to basically, for them not to really notice. It hits them and basically captures them in a kind of like it's a binding spell basically. After that, they get all the mages into one spot, and one of them is actually able to escape by turning into water and using one of his spells. The main mage, the ice mage, basically uses a magical item that turns everyone near him, or at least the other members of the Midnight Sun near him, into ice, and they eventually shatter. This is where both Asta and Magna are very angry, not just because they weren't able to capture them, but because this guy chose to kill not only himself but also his team members, and this gets them very, very furious. After that, the village is saved, and the grandchildren of the village actually thanks both Asta and Magna for helping. And this is where Nero is still in this, actually gets a magical stone from the grandfather's kind of house, and the grandchildren actually give it to them as a kind of gift for saving them, so they get one of the magical stones. So yeah, this came in the video. If you liked this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more of my content, please subscribe. And if you made it to the end of the video, please comment down CS so I know that you support the channel. If you want to support the channel in other ways, there is a beautiful Halo link in the description, or if you want, you can join my Patreon. So as I know it now, I don't have any Patreon, so I can't really shout them out yet. So if you want to join, they will be in the description. And yeah, so with that being said, this is gonna be the video. So yeah.